Hi there, my name is Dani Beaumont, and I'm a Principal Product Manager on Adobe XD. And thank you for joining me today. We're going to focus on Adobe XD tips and tricks. And this session is specifically focused on interactive workflows. And I'm happy to be here. I joined the XD team in the spring, and one of the things I realized new to the team is how much incredible functionality there's in the application that we hardly have time to tell our users about. So I've been focusing on that for the past few months. The session I'm going to do now, I'm going to take it kind of slow. We're going to step through the interactive experience, how you engage with your colleagues and your clients, and then I'll take questions towards the end. We're going to keep this to about a half hour. If you join late or you want to watch it again, I will share towards the end of the session a link to a YouTube channel where you can watch the recording. With that said, let's switch on over. And we'll get started. So I'm going to switch into XD. And I'm also going to go ahead and bring up some notes that I have, kind of working notes for me, so that I stay on track. So as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the workflow and interaction. There are so many different ways now within Adobe XD to just really touch base with the content that you're creating. So to begin with, I have an artboard here, and I've got, probably like you, a hodgepodge of different types of content on the artboard. Towards the bottom, I knew I was going to be presenting this session, so I actually have slides that I push up into the browser just to present my concepts. Up towards the top on this particular project, you'll notice we've got things like wireframes. So very simple interactions with very simple elements that allow you to test where content's going to be really quickly without getting into high fidelity color and elements at that point. For me, I'm going to kind of pick up really with a more high fidelity point in my design process. Let's see where I am, right in here. And I just want to play with a couple different designs. This session, as I mentioned, is really focused on how you interact with others rather than how you create content. One of the things I need you to do as we work here is in the comment section, give me some feedback. I want to know what you're thinking as you're watching the session. One question I have for you are, what are the areas around XD that you know there's functionality that you'd like to see, sort of a nice workflow session like this going forward? I'm happy to take those ideas and roll them into the mix. To begin with, here within my design, I've gone in and I've designed a few different artboards, and you can see them here. And to just kind of prove a point real quickly, I'm going to change a couple of these artboards. So I'll switch into design mode and select the artboard layer here. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it down so that it's a longer artboard. Notice when I do that, I get an indicator here for this device-specific artboard, which is focused on an iPhone, where the viewport will start. So as a designer, I'm able to see what is the default height of this device and where will content begin to scroll. So I'm specifically making the artboard larger than that initial viewport for these first two designs. Next thing I want to do, I can bring my image down a little bit here as well. Next thing I want to do is talk about one of the new features we delivered a few months back, and that has to do with having objects that are in a fixed location or pinned. I'm selecting the header on this artboard. I'm going to quickly fix it in position so that it does not scroll when my content scrolls. Next thing I'll do is come on into some of these lower artboards. I'm just going to, as I mentioned, tie these things together. I want to show you, in addition to fixed elements, how you can define overlays. So let's say for this set of artboards, I want to have a behavior that when the viewer clicks on a menu, that a menu actually drops down as an overlay. So for that, I'll zoom in a bit tighter here, and I want to get right onto my hamburger menu. Let's go on into this guy. I'm going to swing over to prototype mode. And this is always a bit tricky. Let's go back into design. I'm going to make my life a little easier here and just create an empty container that I'll fill with nothing, with no border, just so it's there. And then I'll swing back out again. What I want to do is, in that prototype mode, I want to go ahead and link this menu to the drop-down menu I have here on the right. So this is a separate artboard. It's specifically a different size on purpose, with the idea there being that I can overlay content that's going to be smaller than the artboard it's overlaying upon. If I come in and select this, I'll go in and define that as an overlay. And notice that I can position how that overlay, how it lays over the original artboard. I can also come in and determine how it transitions into the artboard. So I'm going to go ahead and slide down from the top of the screen for that. And as I mentioned, I want to focus a little less on design and more on interaction. So with kind of this very rough set put together, I'm ready to start looking at what I've done. And one of the first ways I can interact with my design is for my own purposes using the desktop preview. So for that, I'm going to come in and click on an artboard just to let XD know where I'm focused. I could be in design mode or prototype, but I'll click on that name of that initial artboard. And I'm a big keyboard combo person here. So I'm going to come in and select Command and, so it's Command or Control on Windows, and then the return key. And that brings up the desktop preview button. If I close that out, I could always do it here on the upper right-hand corner by clicking that arrow to bring up the preview. The nice thing that, again, I did not initially realize about the preview mode is as I'm working on the design canvas, that preview is going to change to adjust to what I'm doing. So I can click between different artboards. I've not published anything. This is not off of my own personal machine. It's just visible in a local instance here on my own device. As I interact with those designs, though, I can come in and start to test some of the things that we've just done together. So I pinned that top navigation there. If I come down to this lower artboard and I want to take a look at the overlay that I define, I can click on it. And then here where I set that hotspot in essence with my hamburger menu, click it and it drops down the menu item. I can make these clickable areas as well that'll take me to another part of my design. So the goal here is to prototype all the interactivity that I possibly can to give the viewer of my design a real sense of what's going on. So I can continue to do this work. I can, as you see here, add an overlay that slides up a keyboard. I can apply this to multiple artboards. But let's say, for some unknown reason, my designs are totally complete at this point, and I'm ready to share it with a colleague. What I want to do is make sure I'm in prototype mode, and I then define the flow that I want to occur between artboards. Now, when you're defining flows, you basically drag wires from one object on an artboard or an overall artboard. This was another nuance that escaped me for a while. You're welcome to put in the chat. I'm open to this, but in comments you can say, Dani, you silly egg. We all know this. You're the only one that doesn't. I'm open to that truth. But if you are also surprised at any time, I'd appreciate that feedback as well. So here in that initial artboard, what I'd like to do is actually create what in the web is known as more of a hotspot. So I want to define a click point that will take me somewhere else. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular item here. So here in prototype mode, see if I can get in on this guy. Come on. So what I did to do that, I find selection in XD to also be a little precious, a little sensitive. So there's different ways you select content. If you want to select an entire artboard and do something at an artboard level, you'll do that by clicking on the name. If you want to click in a group of objects, you can always go to the Layers panel and try to navigate through that. Other ways are if you hold the Command key and click on an object, it will allow you to click inside of a nested set, a group of objects. So I've clicked now, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that wire to the next artboard and determine the transition that I want to use. So for this transition, I just want it to be a whole transition of the entire artboard. So I don't want to go with slide down. I'm going to go ahead and dissolve from one artboard to another by hitting that hotspot there. For the next one, I'll be a little more broad about it. So I'm going to click on the actual name. This brings up the entire artboard. And I can say that basically anywhere you click here, I want it to take me to the next place. Selecting the entire artboard creates the entire area as a hotspot or a click area. So I'll press and drag that one. Transition to dissolve is great. Let's go ahead and just quickly do that a little bit more. Transition to the next. And I do want to introduce the idea of overlays in my artboard, so I'll select that fourth one, and let's just jump to the phone layout that has the overlay associated with it, and that will dissolve transition as well. All right, so my fantastic custom design here is now ready to be shared with a colleague of mine. When you're ready to share, depending on your world, how secure it needs to be, where your colleagues are they part of your internal organization? Are they outside your internal organization? Will determine how you choose to share your content. So one big key here, when you go to publish a prototype on the web, you need to set the home or the starting position for the flow that you've just defined. Now, I showed you that I had a slide earlier in the day that I pushed up to use this guy right here. Let's see. So this one is basically one of the artboards on this design. If I just hit publish right now, that's all I'm going to see in the browser. It's not going to change. So what I need to do is come back in here to XD, and I want to determine that home starting point. To do so, I can come over here and click on the artboard, and notice that little gray box there. I'm going to zoom in for you. But there's a little gray box there that's indicating I can define it as home. When I click on the home icon, it becomes the starting point. So now when I go into preview, if I hit Command or Control Return, it's going to start at that point. If I go to generate a prototype, it's going to start at that point. So I'll go ahead and hit the share button here on the upper right hand corner. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to do things chronologically. We looked at the ability to do a desktop preview. If I want to actually test the fidelity of my design on a device, I have the ability to have mobile previews as well, and that's the icon just here to the left. With a mobile preview, I can switch over and show you this, but we'll keep life simple here. But if I take a USB device and connect it to my computer, and then hit the mobile button, it will share up to that USB device. I can interact, and I get a live preview update. So if the same way I did it on desktop design, if I click on different artboards, those are going to live update on my mobile device, my phone, my tablet, that's connected by way of USB. So that's kind of the second sharing method. One is on your own machine with a desktop preview. The second one is actually using the mobile preview feature on Android or iOS devices, where I can come in and look at the design there in a live mode. The third is going to be share. So what I'll do here is come on into that share icon, and I'm going to select Publish Prototype. Now, as I mentioned, I've done this already before, earlier today. So you can see I have a name that's assigned to my item. I can decide whether or not I want it to have a password. So this is where it comes into security. If you set a single password and share it with 10 people, is that okay? What if you want to make the prototype go away? What if you want to control who can see it and not see it? How well do you have the ability to control that is going to determine which options you choose here. So if I come in and share that up and go ahead and require a password, I can come in and enter it. Of course, it's XD Rocks 18. Because that's the year. If I'm not sure what I just typed, I can take a look at it. So, all right, I got a password there. And I can go on in and update this prototype with that password and the latest design. So if I click Update, XD is going to go on and render that into a browser for me. And once that's done, what you'll notice is I have the ability to capture the link and share it with my colleagues, my clients, wherever I'm ready to do there, or just go ahead and take a preview of it on my own machine by clicking on the preview button here in the browser. I'll go ahead and do that. There's the requirement of the password. Good thing I told you guys all what it is so we can remember together. It's XD Rocks 18. Now don't go trolling around for all my other prototypes because maybe I use that same password a lot. I'll go ahead and hit view. And here I have access to my prototype. Now, as I mentioned, the XD team is moving at the speed of thought, as we like to put it. And the updates that we're delivering are pretty phenomenal. I have the ability here to preview in the browser my design. You'll notice I'm looking at it kind of at an per artboard basis. We have some enhancements just around the corner around how you preview content on the web. I'll just tease you with that. I'm not going to talk about it because I might get somebody mad. But it definitely allows you to have that nice full screen experience in an even richer way. For now, I can come in and select full screen, and I get that full screen view. Notice I can interact with my objects here, so I've got the ability to click to the next artboard, continue on my work as I'm progressing. If I want to step out of that full screen preview, so the assumption here is I've just shared this with a colleague of mine, Ike. He's another designer, and I want him to see the work that I've done. If I hit escape on the keyboard, it's going to take me out of full screen mode and bring me into a mode where I have the ability to share some comments. Now, in this instance, I'm going to channel my buddy Ike. I can come in and add a comment. Notice that there's this little @ mention here. This is really a lot of fun. This relies on the type of environment that you're in. So if you're in a secure network, if you're within a secure network that has an LDAP, basically a group of users that are known within your network, you'll be able to @mention people that come up within your organizations. If you have shared the prototype with someone else already, you'll be able to see their names as you work here. So typing in here, I can see if my buddy Ike's already been added, and he's not quite yet. So I just might come in and add a comment and say, Ike, check out the background, too vibrant. And then I can submit that content. So I'm acting now as myself, and I'm asking Ike what he thinks. If I wanted to go back and explicitly invite some people into my prototype, I have the ability to do that. I'm going to go ahead and switch back into the application. And here in that share view for prototypes, instead of selecting just a password, I'll go ahead and get rid of the password for now. I want to switch over to something known as a private link. So if I switch there, what this allows me to do is choose exactly who receives the prototype. I can add them into this prototype. They'll receive an email, and only if they receive the email and they log in with their Adobe ID will they be able to access the actual artwork. All right, I'm looking at my watch because I can be long-winded, so I'm going to kind of speed up just a little bit here. Now that I've gone in and said I want to create a private link, I'm going to go ahead and decide who gets to get it. I'll go ahead and publish it first, like the application says I should. So I'll create a private link. So unlike the public link that had a password, this is a private link, and it will be locked or tied to the people that I invite. So I'm going to go and invite my buddy Ike. So Ike at Clever Concepts. He's my design buddy. And then I might go in and add Katie as well. Katie's our boss. She oversees our design work. I'll invite the two of them. I can give them context. The real design is real. Check it out. And send that invitation off to them. At this point, they can log in and control that work. All right, so that's another way to share. We talked about the idea of being able to just have a public prototype, having a password associated with that prototype. There's nuances here as well that I do want to mention. If I go back to publish, notice that even if I've gone with a public prototype, I can go in and either update the existing prototype that's out there, maybe change the name to indicate that it's a different version and update it. I can also just generate a new link. That allows you to kind of get an archive up there on the web. So if this is Tips and Tricks Dani Reel 01, I can go ahead and create a new link and name it 02, 03, 04 so that there's a nice archive of versions of my design if I choose it. And then there is the private links. I can always go back to those private links. Let's say after the fact I decide I no longer want to share that with Katie. I can come into my design and take that away once I've done it. I can always go in and take a look at the design by clicking that same link after it's been published. Actually, I'm going to pull back on this guy and go back to that public link here one more time. So we'll do the private link, keep that all good, and take a look at that in the browser. Another really nice nuance that we added in the last month or two, I kind of forget. Notice there's an invite button here in the browser. So I may get all the way to the browser where I'm working and think, oh my God, I don't want Katie to see this yet. I'm okay with Ike seeing it. If I click on invite, it's going to show me everyone that's already been invited and allow me to come in and remove or add any new people right here in the browser. So I don't have to be back at my desk back in my design. If I'm in a meeting and Katie says, why didn't you invite me? I can't see it. I can invite her right here if I know her email address. All right, so the other big piece is when your design work is done. So the assumption is I've gone in, I've wireframed it, I've really fully prototyped out the design. I've done some usability studies, I've validated with my customers, my stakeholders, my clients, my bosses. Are really happy with my work. I'm now ready to go do the onboarding into the production environment with my developers. We have some new enhancements there that are pretty interesting. So if I come back into XD, also something that was not really obvious to me when I first started working with the app, is as you're working on your design, I'm here in the design mode, I can come to an individual artboard, and if I bring up the layers panel here on that left-hand side, I can see all of the layers that are associated with this design. So if I click on an individual artboard, if I click on one artboard, I see all of the content. When I click on an individual item within the artboard, I see all of the layers or elements on that artboard. For each of these, as I'm working, notice when I roll over the layers panel here, I have the ability to determine if I want to export assets here, basically. So notice the mark for batch export feature here. I can come in and select individual items in my design that I want my developer to be able to extract or work with. So I can just come in and check them and do that on a per artboard basis. I can select a lot of artboards and do them in a batch process, but I really want to flag that as the designer here in the desktop application. If I come back now to the share drop down here and jump over to publish design specs, what I'm able to do is publish a prototype again, but this is specifically geared towards a developer so that they're able to see the design work and the specifications associated with that design work and take it forward. So notice the checkbox here that says include assets, and there are 7 assets that are checked. I can come in and now just create a link here. Let's go ahead and do that. That was interesting. I'll go ahead and include assets. I've got my guy right here. I'm going to do a private link again, and I'll go ahead and invite my buddy Ike after I publish it. I have a publishing error. I may have confused XD in my work right here. Well, that's okay. We've got a backdoor. Notice that in my share dropdown, I have the ability to manage published links. So this will take me to my Creative Cloud account where I have all the designs that I have published. So let's assume for a moment I want to go play with a bit of a design spec. Notice that it's a design spec here. And if I click on it, I can view it in the browser. So let's say I don't have my application here. I don't have the link handy. I can log into that Creative Cloud account of mine and see all the designs that have been shared with me, be it prototypes or design specs. I'm watching the clock here. If you have any questions, I'm expecting you're throwing them into chat, or actually into the comments area there at the bottom. Throw them at me. If you have ideas for follow-on sessions, we're whittling down our little half hour here, so I want to hear it. Please put it into the comments. Okay, so as a developer now, I have the ability to come in and take a look at what's been done. So notice as I roll over these individual artboards, I can see how they are linked together. If I click on any one of them with my cursor, even though I'm here in the browser, if I select an item, I can get measurements. So it's showing me as a developer what are the measurement attributes for the assets in this particular artboard. So pretty terrific feedback as I'm sort of crawling the page right now. Another area of improvements that we've added recently is here on the right-hand side. I can see attributes, so the specifications here on the right. Demo gods are not going to be kind to me right now because this asset that I'm looking at, I didn't extract any of the individual items. Had I checked those boxes on this design and published it up, I'd see an asset area here where I have the ability now as a developer to choose what am I exporting for. Is it for web design? Is it for an application? Do I want my vector content to be rasterized as a PNG, for example, or do I want to download it as an SVG? I can decide what the resolution is, 2x, 3x, 4x, resolutions for high DPI devices, things of that sort. So definitely incredibly powerful capabilities over there in the whole designer to developer handoff world. With that, I'm going to call myself lucky. And I'm going to swing back here one more time with my lovely face. And just reiterate again, I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to be part of the XD team. We'll stop looking at my safe face for a moment. How about a little bit of both? What I'd like to do is show you a link to get you to my YouTube channel. So back to the tips and tricks on that next slide. If you want, really? What have I done there, silly girl? Well, I went and broke it. So I'm going to go there directly anyhow. If you go to YouTube, you can jump into my channel, which is Ping Dani, so Pingdani. And the nice part about this channel, if I jump on over there, is that we have a whole section about what's new in Adobe XD. There's also a section that's going to get born today, which is tips and tricks with Adobe XD. Swing by here, check it out from time to time. As I've mentioned, send comments. Here in YouTube, you're welcome to add some comments on individual videos around ideas that you'd like to see going forward. And from time to time, I'm happy to come join you here on Facebook Live. All right, thank you everyone for your time.